Thank you very much for tuning into Pro Life Nose Pusher. My name is John Michael, and I just want to make a reaction video to the appeal. All right, Dillon Deveau. Dillon Deveau, if you know the story, he killed. Apparently, he's guilty of 2, homicides or whatever. He was charged with first-degree murder for the Joe Wiggins case, and then he was charged with the second-degree murder of Vernon Doucette. Right, both of which are really great people. If you ever seen Joe Wiggins, a great guy. Like, this is, all his friends and, especially his mother was extremely devastated to see his passing. But Vernon Doucette was my dad's friend, and every time I see him, he's like, oh, you remind me of your dad or whatever. So, there's no need of that. So anyway, we got Tyler Langford, Michael Sidat, right, which was the primary instigator of the murder of Joe Wiggins, and we got this Brooklyn Gable and Dillon Deveau. So we got four people that have been imprisoned, right, for the. But I'll explain a little bit more about that in a minute. So we got Okay, let's start with the Vernon Doucette case, because that was chronologically the first thing that happened. Vernon Doucette died, and it was a brutal home invasion. They really. I don't get it why they were able to get away with 10 years, right? It's a 10-year sentence for manslaughter. But where's the home invasion? Anyway, it's a manslaughter charge. He pled guilty. They got 10 years, right? And that's going to run, if you can imagine, concurrently, not consecutively, concurrently to, Dillon. Okay, let's talk about Michael Sidat is 25-year parole ineligibility. All right, let's see. Windy and stormy day here, but it's okay. I got my roof, so everything's okay. So what I was saying is 25-year parole ineligibility period, because he was actually convicted at trial of first-degree murder for Joe Wiggins. So, whatever. And the gruesome details about the case are coming up, right? So stick around for the gruesome details. All right. Dillon Deveau was convicted of second-degree murder. It's a parole ineligibility period of 10 years. All right, 10 years. Brooklyn Gable, she's she's 20 years old at the time. She's going out with this drug dealer, Michael Sidat, and, does she really deserve the 10-year parole ineligibility period? Who knows, right? Anyway, so they're going to do some reports. These reports are unprecedented in the criminal justice system, so they don't really know anything about these reports, but that's pending, right? And we know this because the publication ban was lifted, so I'm free to talk about it. Now, let's jump to the Vernon Doucette case. That was Tyler. I know. I should. Okay. Let's go to the chronologically. All right. Let's do that again. Chronologically. Let's start from the start. We got Tyler Langford and Dillon, and possibly another a female. Possibly. I'm not saying there is, but it sounds like there could be a female driver that likes to drive around with a car. I'm not saying there is, but it sure sounds like it could be. I wasn't there. I don't know. But where's the driver? Where's the female driver and all this stuff? Maybe she's gone away with it. Right? But anyway, what I'm saying is that Vernon Doucette got arrested, a violent home invasion. Right? They got arrested for second-degree murder. They got away with it by pleading guilty, right? And I don't know, is there no penalty for the home invasion? Is there no penalty for that? Or is it just one big conglomerate or global sentence or whatever of manslaughter, 10 years, right? So it's actually 10 years, he's eligible for release, right? This is straight time, not life sentence without 10 years of parole ineligibility. But, all right, let's jump to the Joe Wiggins case, right? And I promise you, the gruesome details are coming up in my reaction to it too in a minute, all right? So the Joe Wiggins case, which didn't need to happen, because if the police would have just stopped him prior to this happening, because it was a whole month, right? A killer was walking free on the streets for a whole month. Dillon Deveau was walking free for a whole month, and the police didn't do anything about it, right? The police didn't even do anything about it, right? You know what I'm saying? So if the police would have just stopped him immediately, Joe Wiggins would have still been alive right now. Or maybe Michael Sidat would have killed him anyway. I don't know. But Dillon Deveau wouldn't have had that second-degree murder conviction. Now, this is a convicted killer, right? So now, flash forward to the trial. Okay, so he was found guilty of second-degree murder. Michael Sudat was found guilty of first-degree murder, and the Brooklyn Gable was found guilty of second-degree murder. Right? This is a life imprisonment, and the parole ineligibility period is to be determined for the second degree. Right. So in Dillon's case, it was 10 years. Michael Sudat was 20 years, 25 years, 25 years parole ineligibility period, which is the only thing you can get if you're convicted of first-degree murder in Canada, which he was. Now. So I think that just about sums it up, except, the point about Tyler Langford's mother was found in a ditch or something like that. I don't know if that's true, but Dillon Deveau's mom was nowhere to be found, right? He was always waiting for his mommy to come home, and, it's kind of a sad story, because, the mom never came, or whatever, and the dad was he was a good dad, but he had a little bit of issues himself, but he was a good dad, right? If you know Jake, right, Jake's a good guy, right? There's nothing wrong, nobody can say anything bad about Jake, like, he did a little bit of, screwing around or messing around with drugs or whatever, but he's a good guy. I mean, he's a welder. He was working at Haskell Steel for a long time, managing the place. He's a good guy. I mean, there's nothing wrong with Jake. I know Jake. I know Dillon very, very well. So, the point about all this is, all right, the gruesome details. Gruesome details are right now. And the gruesome details of my reaction right now. All right, so here's the point about the gruesome details and reaction. Michael Sudat scooped the eye out of the socket. Right. Joe Wickens was still alive, right? And we know this because the publication ban is lifted. Joe Wickens was still alive, and Michael Sudat scooped the eye out of Joe Wickens' head. And he's pretending to be a pirate, right? Let me say that again, all right? With a spoon, all right? He's scooping the eye of a person who's alive, right? Joe Wickens is alive at this point. Scooping his eye out and pretending he's a pirate. Then he's throwing the eye in the woods. Throwing the eye. Joe Wickens' eye, right? He had some sort of eye surgery or eye problem anyway. His eye was functional. It wasn't a fake eye or anything. It was a real eye, but it was like it looked different or whatever. But he's there scooping the eye with a spoon out of his socket, out of the head of the victim, right? If you can imagine such a thing. And he's pretending to be a pirate. I mean, just scooping it out, I mean, that's something, but pretending that he's a pirate. And there's a video that exists of this, right? There's actually a video of this. So, what has our society become, right? Pro-Life Nova Scotia will report on these stories because it's relevant, right? So, that's probably the point. All right, let's recap the story. Dillon Deveau was born in Montreal. His mom and dad kind of split up, but, they were still friends. A lot of drugs and everything. And then Jake and the mother, I'm not sure what the mother's name is, they kind of, Jake was taking care of Dillon and all this stuff. Well, he had a grandmother and everything, so they came back to Clare, Nova Scotia. And, Dillon was a alright guy, but he's a sad kid, his mother, he's missing his mommy, right? That's a terrible feeling, missing a parent. I know that feeling. My dad died, right? So it's a terrible feeling. But, just because you're missing a mom, and Tyler Langford's mom, too, I guess she was found in a ditch. So anyway, they are, on drugs and everything, smoking crack or whatever they want to do, meth, I do believe. I don't know about that, but the drugs, right? And then, what happens is that they, brutally assault Vernon Doucette, and they kill him, right? And then he dies later in the hospital, so the home invasion, beating has been aggravated assault has been upgraded to a second-degree murder. And then after that, a month later, the police are not stopping Dillon, and he goes on with Michael Sudat and Brooklyn Gable to kill Joe Wickens and scooping the eye out of the socket of this guy who's still alive and pretending himself to be a pirate. So then Michael Sudat goes down for 25 years without parole eligibility with a life sentence, and then Dillon got 10 years. Okay, I forgot about that, and he's appealing. All right, the whole point about the next point of the story. This video was supposed to end right now, but I forgot about the appeal. So now he's appealing. August 5th, 2026, he's appealing in the Nova Scotia Court of Appeal, presumably for the conviction, and presumably for the second-degree murder conviction. But we don't know. But we know he was on the docket on the 5th of April, 2026, and he's trying to get away with doing less time, I suppose. Thank you very much for tuning in. See you in the next video.